Hey, welcome to What the Fudge. This is the next video for logic. All right. So this time I'm going to be showing you a bunch of keywords you need to know within logic and philosophy. Okay, these are words that they're English words. Yes, we're doing logic philosophy with the English language, and they're English words. But when you use them for logic for philosophy, it makes them different. Okay, so the first one, I'm going to write them all here. Okay, if and only if is the first one. Okay, and make you a list here. If, then, really not different, it's just saying basically just if. You can also just put if. I'm not going to keep that in bracket. Actually, that actually looks pretty good. Let's do that. Okay. Provided that, unless, nor, okay, or, this is also, or, there's just some cases, if you remember the last video, I had the if just by itself, and it just means the same thing. So or, this is also known as either or. Okay. And then there's and then only if. Okay. So these are some catchphrases, some key terms. So what do they mean? Okay. So we're going to do an example, all right? Going to put in the middle this time instead of the left. Hopefully it doesn't confuse anyone. So the example is that I will not go on Santa's sleigh unless Rudolph is there leading the way. Okay. Let me put this on the next one. Unless Rudolph is there. Why is it doing that? No, thank you. Okay, so this is the thing. Okay, so this is the phrase, this is the key word I'm going to change, okay? So let's do the first one. If and only if. And only if. What does that mean? That just means when you have if and only if, that means this. Let's make the action let's make the independent statements, okay? So S stands for I will not go on Santa's sleigh. This is like, remember the last video? I'd go watch the first video on logic and philosophy to understand how to go from something like this to these statements. Okay, how to make into variables. Okay, and then we're saying R, which is Rudolph, spell Rudolph, right, is there leading the way. Okay, so there we go. All right, so when you have if and only if, this makes it when you put it, translate it from logic and philosophy in writing to in variables, English variables, to in variables, this becomes S, and then it's this symbol, R. So this basically means you might be used to, or maybe you haven't seen it, maybe you're just watching this for fun and you've never seen any of this before, which I love that. It'd be great. But if you've seen kind of this thing, logic philosophy before, these variables, you're probably used to seeing something like this, right? Let me move this. S star. You're probably used to that, right? So that means that if we were to have some sort of logic statement, right, some sort of arguments, you'd say S, right? Remember, go watch the last video. You haven't seen this. How to actually do this. How to write this in variable form and then understand why it's correct. Understand that it follows logic. Okay. Well, why it's correct. There's just some ambiguity of what it would mean to follow logic. Some person might define that as something different, which is ironic. But anyways, so here we are. So, for example, if you said S and then you had S to R, and then somebody were to have, you were to say these are the arguments, right? And then you were to have conclusion, therefore R, right? That makes perfect sense. But in this case, right, so that's if S star. But in this case, it doesn't matter if you have S star. So if I were to put that here, let's change this now. This is now, boom, S star. Now it doesn't matter whether I put S here and then R, or whether I put R here and then S. They're both correct, okay? Because it goes either way. That's what if and only if means, okay? I can get into why. Honestly, I can answer that in the comments of why. It makes sense. It does. This is just like a crash course, really quick. These are the words. Let's get through them. Okay, the keywords. So that's the first one. Okay, get rid of that. All right, let's clear it. And that's what if and only if. Now let's go to the next one. If then. So let's go to if. So this one is, I will not go on Santa's sleigh if Rudolph is there leading the way. Okay? These are the exact same. They haven't changed. All I'm changing is one word. The action. That's why I call them independent. I mean, they're not necessarily independent. One might only exist if another one occurs, or as we understand it, it only is existing if one other occurs. There might be other things that cause it that aren't actually written in that statement, but from the information we're given, only one is given. That's not what I mean by independent. I just mean that they're separate things. They don't change if you change the keyword, okay? So I will not go on Santa's sleigh. So if, right, if you were seen the last video, you can also rewrite this. You can rewrite this very easily. Let's get rid of this entirely. You can write this very easily as, let me put it here, as if Rudolph is there leading the way, then I will not go and say it rhymes. I was going to say something really stupid. I was going to say it rhymes both ways, but obviously it rhymes both ways. If it rhymes one way, it rhymes the other. It has to. Anyways. Okay, so if Rudolph is there, then I will not go and say Santa's sleigh. So that's why I have if then if. So it can be written this way or this way, okay? And they mean the same thing. They always mean, it doesn't matter if the writing makes sense or not. This is a case where in English it's not always the same as logic for philosophy. It doesn't make sense. The writing doesn't need to make sense. Basically, if, in this case we're saying if R, right, then S. It literally does not matter what the R and S is, even if it doesn't make sense and you're reading in English. Doesn't matter. You always write it as this. You always write it as R to S. It's hiding. Trying to be like a mouse on Christmas. Doesn't really work. Different senses, but we try. Don't be a Grinch. Actually, I identify with the Grinch more than those people that are named after. What are those called? A question. Okay, so I think I don't know. Okay, so basically, if R then S, R to S. Okay, so that's how it doesn't matter what the R is or what the S is. You just have to know it. So if you see in this writing, that means that whatever's here, you just rewrite it like this, and then basically whatever's here at the bottom goes first, and then S, and then if it's written like this, then it's this, then that. Okay, so whatever, if R, it doesn't matter what R is, it doesn't matter what variable, if it's R or not, it doesn't matter what it is, it always is written like this. So then if we write a conclusion, if we write a statement, right, let me get a new thing. If we write a statement, it's going to be like this. R to S. You guys give me a break. Like, it keeps doing, I haven't once clicked in the middle. This is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, R to S and then S. Okay, so what we're saying is, therefore, this statement means if Rudolph is there leading the way, then I'm going to say a sleigh. Rudolph is there in the way, therefore I'm not going. I'm not going on Santa's sleigh. Okay, so that's what if then is. Okay, so provided that. Now let's change this. Okay, so you have those two. Very simple. Let's go. Provided. This is kind of where it just kind of reads what it is. Okay, so basically, so this means in this case, this is where you have R to S. Okay, and the reason why it is saying provided that. So for the provided that means that this needs to happen for this. So if Rudolph is there leading the way, then I will not go in Santa's sleigh. Okay, that's what that means. So when you provided that, whatever comes after, so this thing has to exist because of this. So I could also say I will eat cookies, provided that I'm not on a diet. Okay, so then from an English standpoint, that would mean if I'm not on a diet, then I can eat cookies, right? If we're saying that R is on a diet and S is eating cookies, right? So from an English standpoint, it would read like that. And that's the same for logic for philosophy. Okay, it's the same way. So that's not, provided that's my favorite of all of them, because I've never come across one that doesn't make any sense in English wise. So like I like it the most because it makes the most sense in my brain. But the other ones are just something people have come up with and say, this is what we're defining for logic philosophy. These are what these words mean. You have to know this, because if you were to go into exam only writing like English words, you'll fail. Because it's not, you have to know what the terms actually mean for the sector that you're using the writing for. And for logic philosophy, these terms mean the stuff I'm telling you. Mean this stuff. You have to do it. You have to do it. Even if it doesn't make any sense in your brain. It's just what they've defined, right? So like I've told you, I gave the example last time of the subtraction sign. Right? Subtraction. It's when you use it for math, yeah, it's a subtraction sign. But it's also, if you don't use it in math, it's just a line. It sounds really dumb, but it's true. So like when you use this, we're saying they're defining these words, even though they're English words, they're defining these words. I went on this quite a while in the last video, but they're defining these words in what I'm telling you here, okay? So you just, when you have these words with logic philosophy, this is what they mean. They don't mean the English meaning fully, okay? There's a tweak to it, okay? It can be confusing. Obviously it means to some extent, but not really. Like there are some changes, okay? Yeah, let's go to the next one. So that is what provided that is. Now let's go to unless. Unless is literally, I will not go on Santa's sleigh unless Rudolph is there leading the way. This, unless just means, it's weird, but unless means or. It means or. Okay, probably should have put or first. So I'm going to do two with one, actually. I'm going to say unless and or, okay? Or, you write it like this. So this is basically saying S, or is written with the V, S or R, okay? Now this is important, very important. I'm sure if you've done any logic for philosophy, you probably know this, but it's important, especially if you're just coming across. But or in logic for philosophy, or means that only one of these have to be true for the whole thing to be true, right? And then you might say that makes sense, it's or, but also both can be true and this statement is also true. That's the difference between the or meaning in English and in logic philosophy. Okay, so both of these can be true for this to be true, and one of these can be true for this to be true. And this leads to different rules. For example, if you have, I'll do this in a different video, but there's different rules. So basically, if I have S, I don't want to confuse anyone. So if you don't want to learn this, you don't have to, okay? This is just, if you want to know this stuff, I have it in another video briefly, okay? So let's say you have S, right? Well, that also means by definition that you have S or R, right? Because you have S. So since S is true, and this isn't an argument statement, I'm just saying if S is true, that means by definition S or R is true, because only one of these have to be true, or both. Both can be true, and this is true. So that's something you can create stuff, and you can use them. You can basically have one piece of logic in variable form, and you can write it in another way in variable form, and they'll both be right. That's for another video, though. You don't have to know that for this at all. I'm just going over the keywords here, but that's what or means, okay? So basically, for this to be true, and unless is just the same. It just means or. That's what unless is, okay? So in this case, if we do this, S or R, if we say S and then S or R, right? Well, actually, I could just write this, make this really simple. S, therefore, S or R, which is what I just showed with that example. And it's true. Because if I have S, right, I by definition have S or R. That makes sense? I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so now we're going to get to the next one. This problem probably hurts your brain the most out of all of them. Okay, this next one. It's probably one of the oddest. Now we're going to do the nor statement. So nor is probably, yeah, I think it's one of the hardest ones. I think it's the hardest one. Confusing. For this sentence, in order to keep the S and the R the exact same, I'm going to have to add a few extra words to the nor statement, but it still makes it true. Okay? So basically I'm going to say nor is also, I should write here actually, neither nor. They're both correct. You can either have nor, just nor, or neither nor. You can do either. They mean the same thing. Okay? So we're going to write it in the neither nor way. Okay? So neither is it the case that I will not go on Santa's, I have to capitalize Santa, sleigh, nor is it the case that Rudolph is there leading the way. The reason why I have to write it like this is because if I don't add is it the case, it just won't even make sense from an English standpoint. And even though sometimes the logic doesn't make sense from an English standpoint, and the writing doesn't, I still wanted my writing to make somewhat sense from an English standpoint. Because otherwise I'd have to change these variables for it to make sense if I don't add these words. And I don't want to do that. Because for example, I'd have to say neither will I not go on Santa's sleigh, which is correct, but nor is Rudolph there leading the way. So I'd have to change the actual sentences of these variables, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep them the same. That makes sense? You probably got the Rudolph one. The S one, so neither will I not go on Santa's sleigh. I'm changing the will and the I. So I didn't want to change these variables at all. So that's why I added is it the case. So nor means that both of the statements have to be false for this to work. Okay? Yeah, so basically, I will not go on Santa's sleigh. That has to be false. And Rudolph is there leading the way. That has to be false. Okay? So when we write this, it's going to be like this, okay? So that means, remember, when you have something, saying something's the opposite, right? If you're saying something's false, this would be negative S, right? Not just S. It's now negative S, okay? That's what's saying this is false, negative S. So this is saying negative S and negative R, okay? That's what the nor statement means. It means they both have to be, both the opposites have to be true. Both of the statements have to be false. Both of the action statements have to be false. I'm just calling them action statements. That's not actually what they call them, but I don't think anyone calls them that. But these are the action statements, okay? And they both have to be false. So that means, and this is interesting because I defined, this is important, this is a good thing you can use in other places. I defined S as not, right? I said I will not go on Santa sleigh. So for S to be false, that means that I will go on Santa's sleigh. That means I'm actually going on Santa's sleigh. Okay? That's what it means. That's what it means when S is false. All right. So in this case, we write actually we write a statement for that. That's what nor means. Okay. So if we write a statement for that, let's write a statement. So let's have. You could even write something like this. Negative S. It's negative S. It goes to negative R. Conclusion, negative S and negative R. Okay. This is saying negative. It doesn't mean, this isn't always true, okay? I'm just giving an example. I'm saying for this example, negative S goes to negative R. For whatever reason. For whatever reason, if I go on Santa's sleigh, Rudolph is not there leading the way. Okay, that's what that means. Okay? Yeah, so I just did the opposite of this and then the opposite of this. For that, I said, yeah. So, for this example, I'm saying negative S is true, so that means I am going on Santa's sleigh. And since negative S is true, negative R is true, and therefore negative S and negative R are true. All right. All right. This is what you need for NOR. Both of these have to be false. Both of these, yeah, false. Let's go to the next one. So that's NOR, okay? Or, I already did OR. It's the same as unless. Unless is the same as OR, right? S or R. Right, that's OR. And both can be true for this to be true, or one can be true for this to be true. And this is very important. This is a very important statement, the OR statement. Very important in everything to do with logic. Very important. Okay. Let's go to AND. And, you saw it with NOR, okay? And, if we were to do AND, let me write out a statement. So, this one's easy. I think AND is the easiest statement. Actually, I said provided that's the easiest statement. Provided that and AND are my two favorite because they make the most sense, okay? I will not go... Actually, I already wrote it here. Oh, long video. Okay. I will not go on Santa's sleigh unless... So let me write... and Rudolph is there leading the way. Okay, so that's what that statement means. So since it's and, what that means and means is that both of these have to be true for this to be true. Okay, that's what it's saying. Okay, so for this writing, it's saying both of these have to be true for this whole thing to be correct. Okay, for this whole, and that's what the and means. So when you write it, remember, S is I'm not going to Santa's sleigh, and this is the reverse of the NOR pretty well, right? Because for and they both have to be true. Not the reverse of the NOR, but kind of. For the NOR, they both of these have to be false for it to not work. For it to be true, for the thing to be correct. Both of these have to be false for the thing to be correct. For and, both of these have to be true for the thing to be correct. All right. So that's a good way to make a connection. For and, both of these have to be true for it to be correct, and for nor, both of these have to be false for it to be correct. Okay. So we have S and R. Okay. They're both true. They both have to be true. So let's do a fun one, okay? And you'll see this in another video that I make. And I'm not going to actually focus on this in the video, I don't think, very much. Or if I do, it'll be very short. It's just basically making stuff. So let's have S. Let's have S or R. no, we don't even need that. S, let's have let's just do simple. SR, finish the video with the simple one. Okay, SR, and that means S and R. Therefore, S and R. Obviously, right? Because if we have, don't really need these spaces, I just like them. We're saying S is true, we're saying R is true, and then we're saying S and R are true. And you can look in a previous video for why this is a thing. But yeah, so S and R are true, so this thing is true. This is true. So that's what AND is. Okay. Okay, so now we're on the last one. Okay? Last one, only if, and I mean, there might be other ones, but I think these are the most common ones you're going to see. I'd be pretty confident writing something with these. Okay. And if you want more practice, you can look online for a sheet, but I don't really think one exists or is very good. That's why I'm making this video, because there's a lot of terms that you just need one place to go to get them all. Okay, so this is only if. So let's change this. So let's change this sentence. I will not go on Santa's sleigh only if Rudolph is there leading the way. That doesn't make any sense, but to be honest, that's how it usually it usually doesn't make much sense when you read stuff. But this logically is fine, even though it didn't logically, it's not. But like from logic philosophy, it's fine. Okay. Okay. So obviously this is S and R, so this is saying, so only if, very simple, only if is the same as if then. It's the exact same, and it works the exact same way. It doesn't matter what's the beginning, what's the end. Whatever is at the beginning, whatever is, that becomes the first variable, and whatever is at the end, that becomes the second variable. So whatever is at the beginning, which is S, I will not go on Santa's sleigh. I will not go on Santa's sleigh, right? And then the next one, what this means is that whatever's first is there goes first. Whatever's second goes second. S to R. And that's what only if means. It's the same as if then, okay? Or if. So I will not go on Santa's sleigh only if Rudolph is leading the way. That means I will not go on Santa's sleigh to Rudolph is there leading the way. That's what that means, okay? And keep in mind for this whole example, I've had a negative be what the normal of S is. Remember that. So it's a little more complicated than normal. You can make a variable whatever you want. I'm just saying that the affirmative, I'm saying that the positive for S is I will not. Might be confusing, but I could have done this all anyways. Not going to confuse anyone. So I will not go on Santa's sleigh only if Rudolph is leading the way. It doesn't matter what's first and what's second. Whatever is first goes first. Whatever is second goes second. So let's do an example. Okay, so actually let me make a new one. I like making a new one because I think it freshes your brain. It's a different box. It's a new box, and I like lighting them up. Okay, so S. Right, now we need to do this. S or R. Okay, that actually doesn't help. Let me do it like this. This combines a few. S and R. Yeah, there we go. So does this make sense? So I'm saying S to R is what this is, right? I will not go on Santa's sleigh only if Rudolph is leading the way. This would assume that I have another statement somewhere, right? I'm just making up these arguments. This whole video I've been making up these arguments here. But I haven't been writing them in English. I've just been making them up. Really what this would look like is it would look like I'm adding. I want to add. I'll put it over here. It would look like. Oh no, I think I have to add. It would look like I will not go on Santa's sleigh. And you can look at my previous video for this. It would look like I'm saying this, that I will not go on Santa's sleigh. And then I'm saying I will not go on Santa's sleigh only if Rudolph is there leading the way. Okay? So this would mean, this would give this. Okay? It would give not the conclusion, but it would give these two terms, right? And I did this in the previous video. I just have been skipping writing that for the, I've been just writing what's here, the whole video, but then here I've been giving you an example of how it would actually work. All right. So you have to assume there'd be something written there. Okay. So since we have S, which is true, and then S to R, because S only if R, therefore R is also accurate. And then we have S and R, so therefore S and R is this is true. This is accurate. Okay, so those are all the big ones. So now I'm gonna do that's pretty much it. So that's all the terms. Now I'm gonna make maybe a somewhat bigger one. Okay, somewhat bigger question. I'll make it on the fly. Why not? I will not go on Santa's sleigh. Okay. Only if Rudolph is there leading the way. So you're going to be with me. I'm going to make this right now on the spot, and then we're going to solve it, okay? And then you can pause the video and try to solve it by yourself and see if it's the same, okay? Only if Rudolph is there leading the way. I'm going to make some more variables. Frosty loves Wendy's Frosties. If and only... Put it over here. I'm keeping that. That's because that's hilarious. But I'm putting over here. Loves Wendy's Frosties. If and only if it's cold. All right. So I just added two more variables. Okay. You can add them with me or skip. No, don't skip. Add them with me. You could skip to where I'm ready to go on like actually solving it. And just have the variables there and try to do it yourself. But then the variables would be there. You'd have to cover the screen. But anyways, I think you understand what I mean. Like to where I've written this all out and this all out, but don't look at this. Just look at this and then try to add the variables yourself. You could do that. Good practice. But anyways, you can do it with me too. Rudolph is there leading the way. Let's go with Frosty loves Wendy's Frosties. They should really do an ad campaign with Frosty. I mean, this is just a wasted opportunity. C is it's cold. Okay, be basic. And now let's add someone else. Let's add the Grinch. I love the Grinch. My favorite. The Grinch will. So I added two more. So we're gonna have G is the Grinch. The Grinch will be best friends with the people. And then we already have C. H is Christmas. See, it's kind of, I have to change them. Neither, I'm going to put is the case. Is it the case that the Grinch will be best friends with the people, nor is it the case that Christmas... See, that's what I meant earlier when I had to change, add is it the case so that the writing would make sense. Christmas will be horrible. Okay, so there we go. Added more variables. Now let's write this out in variable form. Okay, the first one. I will not go on if only if Rudolph is there in the way. So then that means that we go S to R. Okay, and you should stop before and try to solve this yourself. Okay. Frosty loves Wendy's Frosty if only if it's cold. So that means this here, boom, boom. If it's cold. Okay, that's what that means. Neither is the case the Grinch was friends with the people, nor is it the case that Christmas will be horrible. So this is negative G and negative H. Okay. So that's what that is. All right. Now there's no links here yet. There's no links. I haven't actually added any links. So let me add some links so this makes any sense at all. Okay. And then I'm going to say that Frosty loves Wendy's Frosties provided, let me put it over here, Wendy's Frosties provided that what's that? Oh, Rudolph is there leading the way. Okay? Okay. So that we guys had something else. So then I just said, provided I realize it, so that means that this becomes R F. Right? And then we'll say, last one. That's fine. That's enough connections. I'm just going to leave the negative G and negative H by itself. Okay, so therefore, conclusion is that it's cold outside. That's the conclusion. Is that correct? Does that make sense? So you follow it. So we made this. Does that make sense? Well, S is to R, right? Which means that R is now, therefore R is to F. And then F goes to C. So it's cold outside. So with all this, we get that it's cold outside. And the Grinch and the other thing, it's there, and I could have done something, but I decided not to. Okay, so that's all the key terms, and we used a couple in a bigger example. All right, there you go. That's what the fudge. I'm going to be making more. Thanks. I'll see you.